Everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. It's pleased to be with you. The legislature will reconvene tomorrow, February 25th, to continue the important work that Albertans elected us to carry out nearly 2 years ago. As you know, this Thursday, February 27th, Alberta's government will be tabling Budget 2025. And while the introduction of a new budget is always exciting, it is not what we're here to talk about today, as I'll leave that and other budget discussions to Minister Nate Horner, the Minister of Finance. In addition to Budget 2025, this session we will see our government introducing a suite of around 20 pieces of common sense legislation. Legislation that will allow for the implementation of measures announced in Budget 2025 and that will increase clarity, efficiency, and accountability within our province so we can better meet the challenges Albertans are facing. We will table legislation that will ensure our province's laws remain relevant, easy to understand, and responsive to the changing needs of an ever-evolving geopolitical and economic landscape, such as the Red Tape Reduction and Financial Statutes Amendment Acts, and legislation that provides a uniform governance framework for professional regulatory organizations while simultaneously recognizing the unique needs of the diverse professions that they represent. We will be proposing amendments to the Mental Health Services Protection Act that will help addiction treatment providers meet the needs of Albertans, ensuring appropriate levels of regulations are in place for the services provided, and giving Albertans the confidence they need to know that providers are aligned with the standards set out by the Alberta Recovery Model. We will also be introducing legislation to help with the rising costs of living, such as the Utility Statutes Amendment Act, which will ensure Albertans have the access they need to power when and where they need it at a price they can afford, as well as the Automobile Insurance Act, which will mean better, faster, cheaper auto insurance for Alberta drivers, and the proposed Public Safety and Emergency Services Statutes Amendment Act will improve accountability and the protection of freedoms during emergencies. It is important to note that this session is not occurring within a bubble. We are in the midst of a moment of global uncertainty with geopolitical change and shifting markets, and we are saddled with a federal government that's so focused on internal party politics that they seem to have forgotten their duty to Canadians, forcing provinces to fill the gaps where they have failed. As such, in addition to our work in the Assembly, Alberta's government will continue our tireless effort to ease border and trade tensions with the United States and break down barriers to interprovincial trade, ensuring Alberta is in the best position possible to meet challenges as they come. We will continue to enact business-friendly policies that attract investment, continue our work to refocus the healthcare system, and as wildfire season inches closer, we will continue our preparations to protect Albertans and communities from the impacts of wildfires. Because our government is dedicated to ensuring Alberta remains the best place to live, to work, and to raise a family, while questions pertaining to specific legislation or language within legislation would be best directed to the respective minister, I am happy to take questions now in my capacity as the Government House Leader, and will pass over the time to my Press Secretary for the question and answer portion.
We'll now take questions from the media. We'll have time for one question and one follow-up each. We're going to start in the room before moving to reporters on the line. And prior to asking your question, please state your name and your outlet. Catherine.
Okay, Catherine Gurkowski, Alberta Today. So you mentioned these geopolitical tensions. Today is the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump has blamed Ukraine for the invasion. I'm wondering, does this language towards Ukraine, does the hostility towards Canada change how we are going to approach our relationship with the United States, or are you planning on keeping on building those relationships?
Well, Alberta is always going to defend our own best interests, and our Premier has done a fantastic job with that. She has spent countless days down in the United States, working with legislators down there and even meeting with the President himself to help them understand the important role that Alberta plays as a trading partner in a global market, And so what I'm happy to say is that our province is focused on the best interests of our province, our important industries like agriculture, oil and gas, and of course even things like tourism. So I'm very proud of the work our Premier has done. And as a minister and supporting the Premier, I'm going to continue to help her as we try to make sure we continue to make the case for Alberta.
And you mentioned some bills. There's some bills I don't think were mentioned. I believe Affordability and Utilities Minister Nathan Neudorf was talking about something to do with the electricity system. Will that bill be ready in time?
So we do have the Utility Statutes Amendment Act, and the legislation will help ensure Albertans have access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable electricity now and in the future. Greater detail would best be directed to the minister responsible, but understanding utilities, everyone needs access to them, and they need to be affordable and reliable.
Do you have a full list of those 20 bills that you can share?
Today, I have a list of the 9 that we're talking about. There's still a process to go through with the remainder pieces of legislation, but when the time comes, the appropriate ministers will introduce those bills.
Lisa.
Hi, Lisa Johnson, Canadian Press. Compassionate Intervention Act was referenced this morning. Can you give us I'm not asking for a really specific timeline, but are we talking spring session?
It's a good question. I appreciate that. So I think our priority as a government is getting it right, not getting it fast. So I'd hesitate to give you a timeline today, but what I can say is that the Compassionate Intervention Bill is a central pillar of the Alberta recovery model, a model that has been saving lives, changing lives. We believe strongly, as the minister has also pointed out in the Premier, that there's 2 ways out of addiction. There's death and there's recovery, and we believe in recovery.
And I have to ask you, because tomorrow will be about 2 weeks since the former CEO of Alberta Health Services filed a wrongful dismissal lawsuit against this government. I understand the Premier and the Health Minister have denied any wrongdoing here, and there are investigations ongoing into that. How do you feel about those allegations surfacing before this legislative session? Do you support not having a full public inquiry, and do you support the Premier in keeping the Health Minister in her role right now?
I support the Premier and I support the Health Minister. I think it's very important work that we're doing to refocus the healthcare system, to make sure Albertans get access to the world-class frontline workers that we have in this province. The rest is something I won't comment on, given that most of it's before the courts.
Shaylin.
Yeah, Shaylin Skolsky with CTV News in Edmonton. I'm just wondering, following up from that question, at least one cabinet minister has called for Adrienne LaGrange to temporarily step aside amid those ongoing investigations. So just to clarify, you support her staying on in the role amid those 2 investigations continuing? And do you have any concerns about further disunity within the party, given at least one minister has already stepped forward with concerns?
I don't think having an opinion is considered disunity. I support the Premier and I support the Health Minister staying in their positions. And as I said before, there is important work to be done refocusing healthcare, and our Premier and the Minister of Health are taking on that work, and I think that Albertans deserve access to world-class healthcare and the frontline workers we have, and we're going to help make that happen. And that's what I'd say about that.
Over the weekend, we saw groups of people rallying outside the legislature calling for the Premier and others to resign in the wake of these allegations regarding political interference in these contracts. Do you have concerns that your party is losing Albertans' trust and faith to govern?
Well, let's speak from listening to my own constituents, and they have a lot of faith in this government, understanding that we are doing a lot of heavy lifting on a number of different files, not the least of which is healthcare, and I support the Premier. I've heard from my constituents, they support the Premier, and I'm grateful to be in this province and serve in her cabinet.
Janet.
Income tax cut promised. Are we getting an income tax cut this spring?
So, as I said, the budget's coming forward on Thursday, the 27th, which will also be supported by the Financial Statutes Amendment Act, which will include amendments to the Alberta Personal Income Tax, Sustainable Fiscal Planning and Reporting Act, and much more.
Is that yes or no?
So like I said, the budget's coming forward on Thursday. I would hate to say any more on that, as it's the Minister of Finance budget.
Okay, just about on the order paper, we've got Bill 37, Mental Health Services Protection Amendment Act. Is this referring to what you just talked about the protecting public safety with mental health professionals? That's not compassionate care?
So the Mental Health Services Protection Amendment Act is proposed amendments to modernize the Mental Health Services Protection Act by establishing new regulation classes for addiction treatment providers. These amendments will help Albertans have better understanding of addiction treatment services across the province and give them the confidence they need to know the provider is aligned with the Alberta recovery model by meeting standards set forth by the province.
Jack?
Just one quick question for you. One of the ones that you mentioned, the proposed public safety and emergency services statute, you said it'll improve accountability and protections of freedoms during emergencies, and that makes me think of like it's, that legislation is going to be, using either the Manning report that from 2 years ago or last year, and the most recent one that we all wrote about too. Which of those two reports or both or with those changes going to be coming from?
I'm going to leave that question to the Minister of Public Safety, Minister Ellis, who's doing a great job in his file. But I am happy to say that the government is updating its emergency management legislation to better handle complex disasters and crises, enhance community resilience, and ensure the government has the right tools to protect Albertans.
I'll take my colleague's second question, if that's all right. Minister, are you concerned that the Men's Localist lawsuit will distract the public or the government?
The men's, sorry, what?
The lawsuit from the former AHS
Understood.
CEO
Okay.
will distract the public from your legislative agenda or the government from your work?
I don't think that we're going to be distracted from the work we have to do. We have a mandate from Albertans to make sure that we are delivering health care in a responsible, timely manner. We have a responsibility to make sure that our agriculture producers are supported, that our oil and gas sector is supported, that our entrepreneurs are supported, and legislation coming forward this spring will support Albertans and reaffirm Alberta as the best place to live, to play, to work, to visit, and all the above. So that is what we're focused on, and nothing is going to distract us from that.
Go ahead.
Hi, Cindy Tran with the Edmonton Journal. You'd mentioned this earlier, I believe. It's Minister Nally is introducing Bill 38, Red Tape Reduction Statutes Amendment Act. Is this referring to adding citizenship to driver's license, or can you give us more details on what that might be?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Cindy. So this is the 9th introduced Red Tape Reduction Amendment Act since fall of 2019, and the bill includes amendments to improve the lives of Albertans, contribute to the province's prosperity and modernizing legislation. These changes ensure Alberta's laws remain relevant, easy to understand, and straightforward for businesses and citizens to comply. So I wouldn't be at liberty to say much more. Again, I direct most of your questions to Minister Nally, who's doing fantastic work in red tape reduction.
Next is on the topic of tariffs. So the discussion of interprovincial trade barriers has been a big thing. What can we expect from the UCP government in terms of breaking down those barriers?
I think you can expect more advocacy. We have a federal government that has been missing in action for quite some time, who has failed to understand or at least failed to respond to the needs of our province. It's only now that some of the members of cabinet in the Trudeau government are recognizing the importance of an east-west pipeline, something they've denied for years. And I guess it is taking a lot of public pressure and recognizing that, finally, that this is a good idea. So breaking down interprovincial trade barriers and advocating for Albertans is our #1 job, our #1 priority. Our Premier has been at the front, working tirelessly day in and day out, coming to this building, sitting in the legislature, being what I believe is a true leader, someone who is leading this province ahead. And so, you know, as we see the turmoil and really the self-interest happening within the Liberal Party, we're not going to let that distract us from defending Alberta's best interests.
Okay. We'll now be going to reporters on the line. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
We have Heather Cameron from Alberta Newspaper Ltd. Your line is open.
Hi. Just out of curiosity, will any conversations this session be focused on the pending changes to AISH and the pending implementation of the ADAP program that's due to be implemented in July 2026?
So it's really hard to hear your questions, a bit muffled, but what I will say is the legislation that I've talked about today.
I'll repeat it. Are any conversations this session going to be focused on the pending changes to the ACE program and the pending ADAP program that's due to be implemented in July 2026?
I'm happy to talk about legislation that we know is coming forward. Still, other pieces of legislation are going through the approval process, which is cabinet, caucus, legislative review. So I wouldn't be at liberty to talk much more beyond what we've already introduced and discussed this morning, or this afternoon, rather.
Do you have a follow-up?
All right. As a follow-up, I do have a follow-up. As a follow-up, how do you feel about the recent NDP caucus town hall that took place to discuss these concerns that people have about the information that is available about the changes that are coming to that?
I have no interest in what the NDP town hall is saying. I believe if I'm going to hear from all Albertans, that's important to me. But yeah, I'm paying attention to my constituents, my stakeholders, all Albertans, making sure we were responding to them. The opposition has a role to play, but I have no comment on what the NDP town hall had to say.
Okay. Seeing no more reporters queued on the line, I think we have reached the end of our time. If you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is at the bottom of the news release that went out in conjunction with this press conference. Thank you.
Select Board Boundaries Commission?
Is there a question there?
Yeah. Yes. Are you going to appoint it this sitting?
It's a great question for Minister Amory.
What about MAID legislation? With the survey closing in December, I know the minister had signaled that perhaps there would be some changes made. Is that something we can expect this session?
Again, you have to talk to the minister about that. I don't have that right now. There's no legislation that I have to discuss today that would be pertaining to MAID.
And do we have any bills that aren't the two main budget bills that will be needed to implement the budget? You know how we had the Financial Statutes Act to bring in the fiscal framework. Will there be any bills needed to implement the budget?
I don't think I follow the question.
Okay, like, you know how there was a fiscal framework bill and there needed to be money to allow you to keep it in the Heritage Savings Trust Fund? Is there anything like that this time that changes the budget rules?
No, just the Financial Statutes Amendment Act.
And are we anticipating an extra supplementary supply bill because of the uncertainty of tariffs, or is there going to be some contingency built into the budget?
It's possible, but it'd be too early for me to tell that.
Professional regulation, is that just pertaining to the freedom of speech aspect of their job, or does the bill go further than that?
You're referring to the Professional Governance Act?
Yes, reform government framework for regulatory professions, if I can read my writing.
I have a hard time reading my own writing. That's why I usually do it on my phone to take notes there. Yeah, so the Professional Governance Act, which I think is what you're referring to, that'd be ensuring Alberta has a modern and uniform governance framework. That's to help professional regulatory organizations do their important work protecting the public interest for Albertans. So.
But we wouldn't be wrong to assume that that is the legislation that the Premier and Minister Amory were referring to. They put out a video in the fall kind of detailing what they wanted to do with professional regulations. That wouldn't be an insane assumption.
You know, I'd hate to assume anything in this business, but I would say that if it's passed, the Professional Governance Act would streamline the advanced education, professional governance legislation from 9 separate acts into one.
Am I going to have to write a correction if I refer to the video posted in the fall by the Premier and Minister Amory?
I am not your editor. I wouldn't be in a position to tell you what you need, what you should and shouldn't write. In fact, I would never tell you or any of your colleagues what you should or shouldn't write. But I'll leave that to your expertise.
What I will say is we have actually reached the end of our time and we do need to go. Thank you, everyone.
Are you lumping health professions in with non-health professions? Because you already rearranged all of health professions.
Great question for the minister. I understand that you have all these important questions, and I love being here with you. It is one of the highlights of my session, amongst others.
It doesn't feel like it.
Maybe for you, but I sure enjoy this. I enjoy the back and forth. But what I can say is, again, I'm in a position to talk at high level about legislation coming forward. It'd be inappropriate for me as the House Leader to preempt any of the press conferences my colleagues had. Them and their departments work very hard to bring this legislation forward, go through the process, and so I do want to leave the finer details to them
There's a privileged defense against defamation. You can say all sorts of things in the House without defamation. Are you coming up with any strategy in the House to deal with it as these HS investigations are ongoing? Are you anticipating any concern with that?
Again, I'm not really following what you're getting at with the question.
So in the House, you can say stuff, and
Yes.
it's not defamatory. As House Leader, is there going to be anything in the standing orders, or is that something you have to watch with when you're calling points of order?
As the House Leader, my job is always to try to maintain decorum on my side. I leave it to Christina Gray on the opposite side, on the opposition side, to determine what is and what is not tolerable on their side. But there are no standing order changes coming forward, if that's what you're asking.
If you're trying to get any terms banned, though, like in previous, we've seen certain words banned from use in the legislature. Like, are you going to ask the speaker, like, no one can say corrupt care, for example?
Again, these kinds of points of orders come as necessary. I'll address them as they come, but I wouldn't want to preempt what may or may not be said in the chamber. I think we do have a wide range of. We have a lot of opportunity to say what we need to say. That's why we are protected by privilege. But if something is considered to be out of order, or rather raised to the level that would create disorder in the chamber, then we call points of order. But I encourage all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to engage in constructive debate and not to lower the level of debate or name calling.
And that, I am saying, is the end of our time. If you have further questions, you know where to find us. You can find my contact information at the bottom of the news release. Clearly, we're a big fan of all of you, and we are happy to answer questions as they come, so please don't hesitate to reach out.
We'll do it all again at the end of session.
Thank you, Minister.